Hello, everyone. Welcome to our 12th Conference for Teachers of English. As you know, the topic for this year is language teaching during COVID-19. It is a great pleasure to welcome you all into this session and thank you for your participation. Today, I have the honor to introduce Ms. Tevyn Ester Padilla, graduated with honors from Universidad Pedagógica Nacional Francisco Morazán. Is a teacher of English to speakers of other languages. Recently graduated from Southern Illinois University, Carbondale with an MA in Languages, Literatures, and Cultures, and a second MA in TESOL. Worked as a teaching assistant for SIUC and aided in adapting language teaching material for the transition from face-to-face online classes due to the pandemic. Currently, working at UPNFM as a teacher for the English program and the Language Center. So, let's welcome to Ms. Padilla with the topic Zooming in into Humanization in Education. We hope you enjoy it.
Thank you, Ms. Calero. Good afternoon, everybody. Well, here is afternoon. I'm going to begin by sharing my presentation. So, give me a second over here. It's nice to be here presenting to you in our 12th International Conference for Teachers of English. The topic, as it was mentioned before for my presentation, is zooming in into humanization. Okay. So let's begin by talking a little bit about the topics that we're going to be discussing. So I'm going to be talking about humanization, the definition and the connection to teaching, education throughout the pandemic, roles, and we're going to be setting all of our talk here with some samples from Honduras, which is my home country. So first, we have this term, humanization. When we listen to the term humanization, the first thing that might come to our minds is human. Okay? Humanization is related to humans, right? I have here a definition from the Cambridge Dictionary of Humanization, which is defined as the process of showing that someone has the qualities, weaknesses, etc., that are typical of a human in a way that makes you more likely to feel sympathy for them. I also like the definition that the Merriam-Webster Dictionary gives for humanization. I don't have it literally here, but it connects the term humanization to the verb to humanize. Okay, to humanize is defined as to be humane. And what is to be humane? Yes, we're making this chain of terms and connections. To be humane is to have a set of characteristics. And here I have an image that kind of sums up what being humane can be considered. So we have some characteristics here as good nature, considerate, benevolent, kind, compassion giver, magnanimous, permissive, a lot of different terms that are associated with being humane, therefore with humanization as we see all the connections. Humanization is mostly tied with teaching. In our faculty, for example, at UPNFM, our program belongs to humanities, to the Faculty of Humanities. Teaching is being connected to humanities. Language teaching, communication is connected to humanities somehow. But when we talk about humanization, being humane, being humans, we might sometimes think that since we're humans, we already have all of what this term involves. The truth is that we have drifted a little bit far away from that. Okay? At the beginning of this pandemic, I remember seeing a lot of motivational quotes and texts on social media that motivated us to be more humane, to take this pandemic as an opportunity to be more humane, to be kind, to be generous, to sympathize with what others felt, with the pain of others, to understand that we are vulnerable and that life can change from one moment to the other, to learn to be happy, and a lot of positive things. But after 20 months, yes, approximately 20 months in the pandemic, have we done these things? How are we doing? Do you feel you have changed towards a more positive version of you? Or do you feel this pandemic has drained your soul as a teacher? I have over here a question for you. And knowing what humanization involves, what being human and humane involves, is there room for humanization in a class filled with anxiety, fear, burnout, and high expectations? And notice that I'm referring to a class as in general, not only considering the teacher or the students. A class, the whole thing, all of its components. Keep this in mind as we move on in this presentation. So, setting some context, I know we have all lived through this. I know we have been talking about this during the conference. I have been listening to the other presenters, which have been talking about some very important points that we don't always mention. But let's again set some context for everybody to be on the same page. So we have here education throughout the pandemic, because are we really out of this yet? Everybody lived through the same thing. And I liked yesterday listening to one of our presenters, how teachers were commenting that for the first time, all of us were facing the same struggle. However, we haven't been facing the same struggle with the same resources, which is a little bit complicated. But we share some characteristics of how we faced this transition. So during March last year, mostly untrained teachers had to adapt their syllabi to fit the situation. In my case, and I have a screenshot over here of what I had to post for my class. I was teaching at Southern Illinois University during that time last year. And we were on spring break. So we had this week to go on vacation, to have fun. However, during this spring break, we already knew that something was going on. Since remember, things started in Asia, they spread throughout the continents around, and it took some time to come here to America. And I'm referring to America as the continent. So we were noticing some things going on the other side of the ocean, but we were not sure how things were going to be happening here. Were we going to have the same problems? Was it just a flu, as some people might say, and I include myself in that group. I also believe that it wasn't going to be something serious, but we were not sure. Something was going on during that spring break. By the end of the spring break, the States was under alert. Everything was shutting down, including my university. So from one day to the other, my supervisor said, we're going to take one more week, okay? The university has approved, we're going to take one more week of vacation so we can figure out how are we going to do this because we're going online. Imagine, my supervisor, she was excellent in her work, but she was not trained to teach online. She was not an online teacher. Okay, she knew how to teach and how to train teachers to teach face-to-face, but not online. She got the resources. She kept in touch with people who were going through the same thing, and she figured out we were going to use Zoom. So we started to use this platform, and she had a meeting with all of the teachers that were working at the department at the time, and she kind of explained to us what was going on. Okay, what features the platform had, what were we going to use, and what we were going to tell our students. If you're able to read, I know it's very small, but if you're able to look here at this screenshot, I had to notify with the same message that all the teachers sent to their students. So I had to notify my students that we were going to change the syllabus and also some due dates. What was easier at that moment, at that exact moment, was to be flexible. Okay? Nobody knew what they were doing. So we decided to be flexible and try to keep some control over our class. But truth is, we didn't know what we were doing. We tried our best. The year, the semester finished, we kept moving on throughout the year. Many things happened to all of us, I'm sure. But for the next semester, we were more prepared. We had summer to prepare for the next semester. And back at SIU, I had the honor to help in adapting the material from face-to-face to online. We already used, luckily, in our case, we already used some platforms. So it was easier for us to adapt because we already had those platforms. One from the book, so students could have assignments from the book, and another platform that the university uses where we could assign more work and keep in touch with our students. But we had to figure out a way to make these classes focus on an online environment, which was hard, but we had some time to think about it and we tried to do our best. Many resources were made available for teaching. Many resources that before were not meant for teaching were adapted for teaching. And I'm not going to start mentioning all of them, but I'm sure you can think of them. Not everybody uses Zoom. Some people use Google Meet. Some people use WhatsApp, Telegram, and so on. Okay? Many, many resources. And now we are, well, this year, education has been trying to go back to some kind of normal. We're never going to go back to what we used to consider normal. We have to accept that. But many institutions have tried to go back to the classrooms as best as possible. Some institutions have opted for hybrid teaching, in which they're mixing online classes with face-to-face classes. Some institutions that maybe they have less people in their classrooms, small institutions, they have tried to keep face-to-face classes because they are able to keep distance and all of the safety requirements to be able to be in the classroom. However, not everybody is able to do that right now. Many have been successful. Many have tried, they have failed, they have gone back to online classes, which is the case in Honduras. A lot of institutions are playing around, trying to figure out how to do it. Okay? And we are still there. It seems like a cycle. We began here with this fear, not knowing what to do. Then suddenly it seemed that we had an idea of what we were doing, trying to go back to normal. And now again, with the latest news, we know that maybe we will have to go back to the beginning, maybe, because we're not sure. So this is some kind of, somehow the setting that we're all facing. Every country has their own needs, economically, socially, political needs that are different from one another. So it will change, but I guess more than one will feel related somehow to the situation that I am presenting. I have seen the difference from teaching back at SIU and now here at UPN. Okay? By looking at my father teaching to high schoolers and by listening to my friends teaching to elementary school. Everything is different. Right now, we move on to roles. This is a topic, a very broad topic for discussion. All of us have at some point discussed what are we supposed to do as teachers? What should we expect from our students? What are we supposed to do as students? Because all of us were students, some are still students. So which are our roles? How those roles change right now during online classes? How? Why? So we have here the teacher's role. And I also want to mention that this presentation is especially focused on university students because that's my field. So maybe some of the things that I'm going to mention are not going to work in the same way with kids because I'm focusing on university students. Some of them might be transferable to also teaching kids, but just to keep in mind. So we have here the teacher's role and some myths or truths. So first, we have this one that is very, very common, okay? Teachers are the only trustworthy source of information. Some people might believe this is an archaic statement. Believe me, it's still going around. But is this a myth or is this a truth? And if you're watching right now on YouTube Live, because I don't have audience here on Zoom, you can comment. Okay, go ahead and comment. Do you believe in this or not? On the chat, share with the other teachers watching this video your opinions. Okay, what do you think about this? Is this truth or not? Teachers are experts. That means they should always know. Myth or truth? Should the teacher always know everything about the field in which they are working? Teachers should guide students. Okay. Should teachers take that role of a guide during students' learning process? Teachers should avoid bonds with students. And the last one, teachers have to be aware of each of their students' needs that could somehow affect their learning process. Myth or truth? Now let's go through each of them. So on the first place, we have here this one, teachers are the only trustworthy source of information. That's a myth. Teachers and students and parents, if I have parents watching over there, or if you're a teacher and a parent, and or a student and a parent, we have to understand that teachers are not the only trustworthy source nowadays. Before, years, centuries before, teachers were the ones who had the most access to information. That's no longer our reality. Everybody has access to information. However, as teachers, we should teach our students to be critical thinkers and understand which pieces of information that they find are trustworthy and which ones are not. But as teachers, we have to understand that we are not supposed to idolize ourselves and consider ourselves the only source. We have to encourage our students to look for information somewhere else and teach them how to do that. Teachers are experts. That means they should always know. Nope. And I have had the pleasure to also supervise teachers, to supervise classes, to know what's going on in these different environments created by teachers. And I have seen this before, especially when in the terms of language teaching. I have had the pleasure to teach Spanish and English. I'm a native Spanish speaker, as you might tell from my accent, but I have taught both of them. Sometimes when we are native speakers, we believe that since we're native speakers, we know what we're talking about. Or maybe we have been speaking the language for years, for many, many years, more than the ones we studied at an institution. Sorry. But we are not experts in every single detail of what we are teaching. We as teachers are the eternal learners. We have to study. No, it didn't end when you got your diploma. You have to keep studying. Are you going to teach this lesson for the 15th year? You still have to go to those notes and study. Is this the first time you teach the lesson, but you remember teaching it, when you were in your practicum? You have to go back and study again. You have to prepare yourselves. And when you prepare yourselves, you have to prepare yourselves to deal with any possible outcome. And I love this about my practicum at UPN, where I was told to ask the questions that my students might have. And I had to write all of those questions on a paper. Okay, I'm teaching this topic. My student might ask this, or this, or this, or this, and have a possible answer for each of them. Because when students start asking, it's easy to forget what you have already learned some time ago. And when you answer a question without really knowing what you're talking about, you're going to confuse your student, and it's going to be a disaster. And it happens, believe me. No matter how many times you have taught the same class, the same lesson, you have to prepare yourself for that. And remember that students change. People is different. Every individual is different. So the class, even if you're teaching the same lesson, you're not teaching it to the same class. Teachers should guide students. Yes, teachers should guide. Okay, they should show the way. They should guide students through their learning process. That's our duty, guide. Okay, keep them safe, keep them on the path that they're supposed to follow. Teachers should avoid bonds with students. This one is a tough one, right? Remember that I told you we were focusing on university students. There is a reason why. The bonds that you have with children are not the same that you can have with young adults at university or adolescents at high school. It's not the same. But bonds should be kept professional, but should be there. The learner learns better when they have some kind of a bond with the teacher, when they're able to communicate with their teacher, when they feel confident enough to present a question to their teacher. And this can only be achieved by creating bonds, healthy professional bonds. Teachers have to be aware of each of their students' needs that could somehow affect their learning process. Another tough one. I have heard it, and I admit I might have thought it a couple of times. I'm not a psychologist, I'm a teacher. But we have to be aware of our students' needs. Yes, maybe you're not a psychologist, you're not the expert, but you have to be aware of what's going on in your classroom to make it a safe environment for your students. You have to learn about the different struggles that your students might present, especially right now during the pandemic. There's a lot of stress, anxiety, and depression that's going on, and we don't talk enough about that. But we have to be aware of it, and we have to be able to acknowledge our students' struggles that might not be reflected in any physical form, but yes, they're reflected on how much learning, how much knowledge they acquire from the class, how much they dedicate to studying after class. So yes, we're not psychologists, but our classes are being affected by our students' mental health somehow. So we have to be aware of that. We have to make the research, and we have to try to make the environment as safe as possible for our students and help them until the point in which it's our duty to do so. Now we move on over here with the student's role. And this is both for students who might be watching, who are still preparing to become teachers, and teachers who are also watching. So myth or truth about students. Students should always be available for academic activities. Students should stick to a generalized teaching method. Students are responsible of their own learning. Students should obey their teacher. And students are sponges that absorb the teacher's knowledge. Myth or truth? What I'm writing here are statements that I have heard as a teacher and as a student. Maybe you have heard them before also, not as it is stated here, or you have felt the teacher has meant any of these things before. So what is myth? What is truth? Students should always be available for academic activities. It's easy to tell our students now that we're on this online modality, send them a link and tell them, you have to connect, you have to follow this link and get into this meeting right now. Because you're at home anyway, so you just have to go into your computer and put it there, so do it. No. Students shouldn't be always available for academic activities, no matter if we're in this online modality in which we're at home. A student's personal time is their own. And as teachers, we should understand that. As students, you should understand that. We have to stop being people pleasers. Academic activities, yes, sometimes they occur outside of our classes. There is this important conference that you should attend, okay? Give the student the information about it. Is it going to happen during your class? Okay, tell them instead of going to the class, you're going to go to this conference. Is it going to be sometime not in your class? Here's the information. If you're able to go, please go. But we cannot force our students to give us their personal time. It's theirs. And remember that our students, especially here in Honduras, they have other things to do. Most of our students work or have a family. They might have a spouse, children, or parents, siblings to take care of. And if they have registered a class at certain time, it's because that's the time in which they are free to receive the class. So we have to be considerate about our students' time. Students should stick to a generalized teaching method. I love this, and I have some references at the end. But while reading and trying to prepare for this conference, I found this article that said that the learning style is not the same as teaching style. Every teacher has their own teaching methods, their own teaching style, strategies, the way they like things to be done. But that is not the same as your students' learning style. Each of your students is going to have a different learning style. And sometimes your teaching style is not going to be the same, okay? It's not going to be compatible with your students' learning style. So what should we do? And that's one of the wonders of teaching, that we have to learn to adapt. We have to look at our students, to analyze them, to see what works for them, what might not work, and try to find some common ground, because all of our students are going to have different learning styles, and it's impossible for one teacher to address each of them. But we have to find some common ground and work together with our students to be able to work, okay, to be able to make the lesson work. Students are responsible of their own learning. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. In Honduras, in Spanish, we have this term called cucharear. Cucharear comes from cuchara, which is spoon. And we use it when we feed children, babies, with a spoon and give it the food in their mouths. Okay, so we sometimes do that with our students. We want to give them everything, to make everything easy for them. We treat them as kids. And remember, I'm talking about university students primarily. So they are no longer kids. And we have to give them independence. We have to give them control over their own learning, because if we don't do so, students are not going to learn. If you keep giving them all these videos, all these links, so you can do this for the reading, they are not going to learn. They have to also be given the chance to explore the world of information on their own. It's going to be tough, yes, because they're used to being treated like babies. But we have to do it. We have to give them independence. Remember that our role as a teacher is to guide our students while they are acting upon their own learning. Students should obey their teacher. Students should obey their teacher. Not really. Students should learn to respect their teacher, but to obey seems something too dictatorial, and it shouldn't be like that in a classroom. Students should be able to disagree with their teacher in a respectful manner, and the teacher should be able to understand that disagreement. And if the disagreement is wrong, because sometimes students are going to disagree and they're going to be wrong, you have to be able to explain why they're wrong and guide them towards what you're trying to explain without being dictatorial with them. Students are sponges that absorb the teacher's knowledge. We have been saying this a lot of times. Yes, for some of you, it might seem like this archaic thinking, but believe me, it's still there. It's still out there. People are still saying these things. Students are not sponges. Think of students as operating systems. And yes, like the one that our phones have now, like Alexa, like Cortana, like Siri, I don't know, all of these operating systems. Think of them like that. You give your student the basic knowledge. Okay? You give your student this facts, this data, and your student has to learn to be able to connect this data that you're giving them to the previous knowledge that they have, and learn to keep it there because sometime in the future they're going to need it. Learn to connect with different things. Students are not sponges anymore. They're operating systems that are connected to everything around their world. And now I feel that I talk too much, that I talk too fast, but apparently I'm going at a nice pace. We're going to talk about Honduras. And for some of you, you might even wonder, where is Honduras? Why is she talking about Honduras? Well, Honduras is this small country in the center of America. We like to call it the heart of America because it's kind of shaped like a heart. And in Honduras, where I teach, and many of the teachers that might be watching this and the committee who is organizing this is in Honduras, we're still mostly on online classes. Most of universities, high schools, and schools are on online classes right now. Some of them have begun taking steps towards going back to the classrooms, but mostly everything is online. And in Honduras, according to FOSDE, we have 40% of children and adolescents who abandoned school during 2020, the year in which the pandemic began. We also have 50,000 of young adults who abandoned the university during 2020. This data was taken by some of the major universities here who compared their initial registrar with what was going on at the end. Okay, so how it dropped. And according to FOSDE, these are some reasons for the alarming numbers in school dropout. First, we have high crime rate, and that 7 out of 10 Honduran families live in poverty. We have this other thing by Presencia Universitaria, which is this platform from our national university, UNA, that also lists some reasons for school dropout: lack of internet access due to poverty, unemployment due to the pandemic, obsolete teaching methods. So if we see these things are all somehow connected to the pandemic. Yes, Honduras has always had struggles with crime rate. Yes, but with the pandemic striking the country, everything has gone into total chaos. There is more crime because there is more unemployment, so there's more poverty, so people have to eat somehow, so there's more crime. And all of this is somehow connected, okay? This is a huge mess. And this is reflected in education, in our classrooms. But overall, I want you to notice this here: obsolete, yes, teaching methods. Okay, keep that in mind. So what's going on in our classrooms with all of that happening in Honduras? Some of the daily struggles that our teachers and students have are connectivity problems, reduced attention span, material design is time-consuming, burnout, misunderstandings, and anxiety. Okay, this goes both ways, students and teachers. Is there anything I can do as a teacher? Like I mentioned before, some of the causes that are affecting education are not really on my control because I don't give employment to people. I don't control crime rate as a teacher. So is there anything I can do? And that's where I told you to keep, that's why I told you to keep on mind these obsolete teaching methods. We should remember that we are humans, okay? Everybody here is human, everybody in the teaching system. Our students are humans, teachers are humans. And what does this mean? That we have to remember that we are going to feel things, that we're going to feel frustrated, that as we, as teachers, feel frustrated, so are going to feel our students, because they are humans as well, and they have their own responsibilities, okay? Just as teachers do. And students should remember that teachers are humans, that teachers have their own lives besides teaching, that teachers have also anxiety, that teachers are also thinking, what are they going to do, okay, with the money to help their family, to buy food, to take care of whoever they have in the family that needs help. All of us are struggling the same way. And what do I have for this? What recommendations can I give to you? Now, it's not all bad in this presentation. So I have some tips for you. For some of you, they might seem like logical things to do. For some of you, it might seem like new things to do. But first, I have here set limits. And this is something that I loved about teaching at SIU, setting limits. When we set limits, we prepare this, we have to prepare a syllabus, prepare a detailed syllabus, discuss your syllabus on the first day of class. Your syllabus is your best friend, okay? It is your best friend. Respect that syllabus. Socialize your syllabus with your students. Make any needed changes after the first class meeting, because your syllabus has to be changing according to the students that you have and their needs. Set the example by respecting your syllabus. If you told your student you were going to have a quiz on this day, have the quiz on that day. If you're going to change the date, give enough time for students to know which changes are going to happen, okay? Respect your students' limits. Don't steal from your students' free time. Let your students know it is fine to say no. Be aware of your reality. Point out the weaknesses of your environment. Prepare yourself. Be aware of what's going on, okay? And prepare yourself for any possible outcome. Acknowledge physical and mental health. Educate yourself on mental health. Let your students know it is fine to take sick days, even if they don't have a cold, but if they're feeling tired in here, they should be allowed to take a sick day. If your institution has a health center, if that health center is going to be your best ally. So work with them to give your students a safer environment. And respect the amount of information, of personal information a student is capable or willing to share with you. Emphasize trust and communication. Allow students to ask questions during or after class. and answer students' emails and or texts. Once you have created these spaces and you have stated these spaces for your students, respect them, answer them, okay? Answer them, answer the questions, even if it's the same question for 1,000 times. If it's on the time that you have allowed for those questions to happen, answer them. And last, because we are almost done with time, okay? Be humane, be kind, be patient, be understanding, be sensitive, sensible, which are different things. Flexible, vulnerable, wrong, right, be willing to learn. Your teachers, you're human, be humane. Make your students see you as a humane person who feels the same way they feel. Allow your students to be humane. They are not machines. Yes, they're on the other side of a computer or a cell phone, but they are not a computer or a cell phone. They are humans, and so are you. Okay? And to close up over here, I have this quote by Aristotle: educating the mind without educating the heart is no education at all. Like I told you before, we're not machines, we're humans. Educate your mind at the same way you educate your heart, your emotional part. Show yourself as humane as possible and allow your students to be as humane as possible in your classroom. Make it a safe environment. Some references over here and some credits on slides for SlideScope for this presentation. These are some readings. Some of them I directly quoted in my presentation. Some of them I read them to have more understanding on what I was talking to you about in here. So I hope you enjoyed the presentation, and I hope you remember to be humane. To allow yourself to be humane and allow your student to be humane in your classroom.